2025 has been such a good reading year for me so far. Today I'm going to talk about the best books that I've read so far this year. I have 9 that I'm going to talk about. The first one, that just in case I forget, because I don't actually own a copy, because I listened to it as an audiobook, and that is Raising Hare by Chloe Dalton. So this is a memoir. Chloe Dalton is like a political advisor, and during COVID she ended up spending a lot of time living in the English countryside, and one day she found an injured leveret on one like country road, and it had been like chased by dogs. So she doesn't really know what to do. She's very conflicted because she knows that if she takes this leveret, that it will probably end up being rejected by its mother, but she also doesn't want to leave it there because it's probably going to die. So she thinks about it, and eventually she just decides to take it, and she ends up raising this little hare. And it's such an interesting non-fiction book. I don't know why that I couldn't think of the word. It's really well written and just very fascinating, because hares are notoriously difficult to raise in captivity. They're very unlike rabbits, and there's a lot of hard work. They do not do well being raised in captivity. So this hare really has a lot of leeway. They can kind of come and go as it pleases, this hare, and she doesn't really ever know, like, is she going to see the hare today? Like, it really is like the hare is up to the hare. And yeah, it's very good. I loved the ending. That probably, I don't know if it's like controversial, like maybe not everyone would like the ending. I personally thought the way that it wrapped up was good. It was sad, but I was really like affected by it. I would recommend this book definitely to fans of The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elizabeth Tova Bailey, and vice versa. If you like that book, you should read Raising Hare, because both of those books chronicle time spent with an animal companion, and how both of those writers ended up like appreciating the fragility of life and the importance of kind of taking things slowly and just, you know, accepting things and just not worrying and stressing about unimportant issues. So I really enjoyed that book, and I would definitely recommend it. The next books are books that I have. So I have 8 books here that I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to talk about them in chronological order, because why not? So the first book I'm going to talk about that I have here is actually the first book I read this year. I read the entire thing on New Year's Day. It's not very long, so you definitely can read it in one day if you were so inclined. So this is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula Guin. This book is crazy. So interesting. Just, it really kind of just blew my mind and set off my reading year on like such a high note. So this is a science fiction novel. It's set in the kind of near future. Our main character, his name is George Orr. He ends up realizing that he can control reality with his dreams. So like one day his aunt is like staying with the family and she's really annoying, and he dreams that she's gone, and then he wakes up and she'd been like dead for like 2 weeks or something like that. But basically he's obviously very freaked out by this. He's afraid to sleep, so he ends up taking lots of drugs all the time to stave off deep sleep, but that's obviously not going to be beneficial in the long term. And he ends up being sent to this like sleep psychiatrist guy called Dr. William Haber. I think his name is Dr. Haber. Yeah, Dr. William Haber. And Dr. Haber realizes what is going on, so he decides that he's going to manipulate George and kind of change the world and make the world a better place. And that's all I really want to say because it is so short. But basically, things do not go as planned. This novel really talks about the importance of using like correct language. And like that's just useful anyway, but especially like in terms of dreams, like to make sure that you're actually the words that you're using and how someone else can interpret them in a dream world. This book goes places that you will not see coming. And I kind of feel a bit like it kind of spoils a bit just by me saying that, but I was shocked by what happened in this novel, and I love the ending. I just really, really enjoyed this. I've read from Ursula K. Le Guin before. I've read all of her artsy novels, but this I think I'm going to get on a lot better with her science fiction, so I cannot wait to read more from her in terms of her science fiction, and I would highly recommend this. And I know I say that all the time, I highly recommend this, but this is one that I definitely recommend to, like, I would like recommend this broadly to a lot of people. I think a lot of people can enjoy this, and maybe I couldn't say that for a lot of these novels that I'm going to talk about, although some of them are quite commercially successful, but this is one that I would like easily recommend to a lot of people. The next book I'm going to talk about, so this is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. This is a non-fiction book about the animal agricultural industry, particularly in America. So this was published, I think it was published in like 2009 or something. So it was published quite a long time ago, and I really wish that he could write like an updated version, because this was incredible. It just blew my mind. I am already a vegan, but if I wasn't and I read this book, like 100% it would have turned me vegan. I think if you are someone who eats meat or eats animal products, you should read this book, especially if you are American, because this has a focus on American agriculture, obviously because the author is American. But this was like crazy good. The writing in particular was a big highlight for me, because I like non-fiction books that have like literature value, if that makes any sense. Like, I appreciate when non-fiction writers, like, you can tell that they read fiction, because his writing is so lyrical. And I would, again, I'm not even going to say it, I would recommend this. But especially if you eat meat, if you eat animal products, I think you should read this, because it will open your eyes. And yeah, it was a very hard read at times, but well worth all the emotional pain that you're going to suffer, because I think this can end up changing a lot of people's opinions. This is The Patron Saint of Liars by Ann Patchett. I've talked about Ann Patchett so many times on my channel before, but I'm going to talk about her again because I love Ann Patchett. This is actually her debut novel. So this is about a home for unwed girls in Kentucky who are pregnant. So our main character, Rose, she ends up going to St. Elizabeth's, but she actually is not single, she is married. So it's kind of bizarre that she would be going here in the first place. But she goes to this home for unwed girls with the intention of giving up her baby, because girls go here for a couple of months, they normally have the baby's taken, and they just go back to their normal lives. This is set in the 1960s, so this probably happened a lot. So Rose goes with the intention of giving her baby up. And I don't think this is spoilers, because it's kind of, you kind of know straight away, but she ends up keeping her baby and staying at this home, and it follows her and her daughter. I don't know the spoilers, I don't know, but it ends up following her and all of the sisters that live in this home for unwed girls. And I really enjoyed this. I don't know why I'm always surprised that I enjoy Ann Patchett's books, because she's my favourite author, so it shouldn't be surprising. But especially because this was her debut, I was kind of a bit like, oh, like, will I like it? I left it to last because I was just worried that it wasn't going to be as good, but it was definitely good. And I love the characters. She just has a way of writing characters that feel so real. Particularly the main character Rose. I really enjoyed her. I related a lot to her, but I think people don't like her. If I was reading reviews and people said that she was really unlikable and like blah blah blah, and when you actually relate to a character, it's kind of funny because I thought she was completely believable. I saw myself a lot in her, and I loved all the other characters. I loved Cecilia, who's her daughter, and I loved Son, and I loved Sister Evangeline. She was one of the sisters who lived and worked in this house. She was like in the kitchen. I loved all the relationships, just where the story went. I just loved it. I loved the writing, loved the atmosphere, loved everything. I love Anne Patchett. Not her best, but still a very worthy novel, and I cannot believe that this was her debut novel. Like, I think she was younger than me when she wrote this, which just blows my mind. I wish I could write like her, because she just is in a league of her own, in my opinion. So yeah, Anne Patchett. Read Anne Patchett. Next up, this is the best book I've read so far this year, and I don't anticipate that anything is going to be able to replace it. It was just, so this is The Book of Strange New Things by Michel Faber. I absolutely adore this novel. I was shocked. I owned it like for 7 or 8 years before I read it, and I don't know why I kept putting it off, but I'm so glad that I actually read it now, because I don't think I would have appreciated it if I had read it back when I bought it. So everything works out, because this, as I said, this is my favourite book that I read this year. So this is a science fiction novel, but it's like a literary science fiction novel. It's not as heavy on the science fiction as you think it's going to be when you read the synopsis. So the main character, his name is Peter. He is like, I don't know the terminology, I get confused. So like, he's a preacher, he's something to do with religion anyway. Like, when it's like Church of England, I get confused, but he's basically like a preacher. He works in a church, and he is chosen to go on this scientific mission to another planet, to preach the word of God to the inhabitants on this planet. So the planet has been colonized. I'm not gonna like there's people from Earth that have been living there for a while. This science mission, like, they've been there for ages, but he's just like coming now because the alien inhabitants have requested a preacher. I don't want to say too much because I really feel like it kind of spoils it, but he's being sent there basically for like a couple of years. He's married, but his wife is being left back on Earth, and he is basically, preaching the word of God to these alien inhabitants. And the science fiction part, as I said, is not really important. Like, if you're reading it for the space travel, like, forget it, because it's kind of just like blink and you'll miss it. Like, he is on this planet. Like, it really is a literary novel. It really talks about the relationships. So as I mentioned, his wife is back on Earth while he is on this planet, like, who knows how far away from her. And they communicate through email, which is something that I really love. I love an epistolary feature in a novel. So you get like the emails back and forth, and because they are so far away from each other, the responses are delayed, which I appreciate, because he'll be writing stuff and then she'll email back responding to a message that was sent ages ago, and they're kind of playing catch up, and the relationship kind of starts to deteriorate while also back on Earth things are going wrong, and he's kind of so far away, he's like helpless. And I learned that Michel Faber's wife was actually dying of cancer while he was writing this book, and it hurts me deeply to think that, because at the end of the day, this is a story about like relationships and connection, human or otherwise, because I haven't talked anything about the aliens, and I don't want to, because I didn't know anything, and learning about them was actually mind-blowing. I love them so much, and their culture and their ways of being and their language, everything was just so fascinating to learn. So I really don't want to talk too much about it, but I adored this book. I really just can't put into words how much I loved it. When I love a novel, I find it really hard to talk about it, whereas if I hated it, I could probably talk about it really easily. But when I love it, all I can say is like, I love it, it's so good, you should read it. But you should. It's 500 pages, I think, and I read it in like 2 days. I just couldn't put it down. It was just such a surprise, and I recommend it. You know it. I do recommend it, as I said, but I don't know if everyone's really gonna love this, because it doesn't, like, it has fine ratings, but again, everyone hates the main character, and I like the main character, so maybe I like an unlikable character because I relate to them. But if you do not like an unlikable character, you will not like this book, I'd say, because Peter is just, he's a bit of a fool. Like, he's well-meaning in a way, but like he is a bit annoying. But I like that. So yeah, I know I haven't done a really good job of selling this book, but like, I think everyone should read it. It's just so good. The highlight of my reading year, without a doubt. And again, I really cannot imagine any book possibly beating this as the best book of the year. So if that's not enough of a recommendation, I don't know what is. So, The Book of Stranger Things by Michel Faber. Check it out. So next up is a very popular book, for a good reason. This is James by Percival Everett. I love Percival Everett. He is a magnificent writer, and I can't wait to read more from him. But this is his most recent book. It's won like so many different awards. I can't even like number how many awards it's won. It's just so popular, and I said for a good reason. So James is a retelling / reimagining of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn from the perspective of Jim. So if you've read Huckleberry Finn, if you've had the misfortune of reading the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Jim is a slave, and in that book he ends up running away, Huckleberry Finn ends up running away, and they end up like kind of joining forces and going on an adventure down the Mississippi River. But people think that because Huckleberry disappeared at the same time, people think that Jim killed him, because Huckleberry fakes his own death. It's this whole long thing that's going on. I read a lot about whether you should read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn first before reading this. I hate both of those books, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, so I personally wouldn't recommend it, but I do appreciate the details that you might miss if you haven't read the original. I don't think it's necessary. You can read this as it is, and it's a masterpiece. Percival Everett does such a good job of creating a very well developed like 3D human character in Jim, who isn't given much character in the original. So did I even talk about what happens? As I said, James, he ends up running away, and it's an adventure that they go on down the Mississippi River. He is a slave. He has a wife and 2 daughters, I think. I don't know, I can't remember what it is in the original. I know he must have a family, but one of the big things about this novel is that Percival Everett writes James as a very intelligent and aware character, whereas in the original he is like dumbed down. It's very of its time. Like the character was a slave, so the way he would speak, for example, in the original is very different from how he speaks in this. He's a very cultured, intelligent character, so when he's speaking with other slaves, he's very intelligent, but they kind of play with that when white characters, slave masters, are around. they kind of dumb themselves down. And yeah, this is just a really great novel. I think I read somewhere that Percival Everett reread the original like 17 times or something to write this, which is kind of crazy. Rather him than me, because that was such a painful experience to get through the original. It's very fast paced. Their chapters are quite short. It's just under 300 pages, and I think I read this in like 24 hours. It's just such like a high speed, like galloping. It is like an adventure novel, and it feels that way. You kind of can't put it down. So James by Percival Everett, would recommend. Next up, this is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. I love this book. So this is a historical fiction novel. It's set in 412 BC in Syracuse. So this is actually based on a real story. So during the Peloponnesian War, the Athenians were convinced that they could kind of take over Syracuse. So they sailed over and were basically shockingly defeated. I think there was like 7,000 Athenians that were left over, and they decided to put them into this like pit, into this like quarry, and essentially leave them there to die, to starve to death. So Ferdia Lennon takes that and reimagines it in this novel. Ferdia Lennon is Irish, so this is really interesting because it's written with an Irish lilt. It's written as if the characters are Irish, and as someone who's Irish, I really appreciated this. I don't know how he managed to pull it off, but he does. So the main characters are Guin and Lampo. Yeah, Lampo and Guin. They are unemployed potters, and they kind of just stroll about all day, drinking in the pub, and yeah, are depressed. One day, Lampo decides to go and visit the Athenians in the quarry, and the two of them get it into their heads to stage plays by Euripides and have the Athenians act in these plays. So kind of a very interesting concept. This is like touted to be a comedy, and yes, it is a comedy, but it's like a black comedy, because why was I crying so much when I was reading this? The ending destroyed me. It's so good. I think Ferdia Lennon was writing this for like 10 years, and it really shows, because I cannot imagine how he conceived of this concept and how he executed it so well. This is also a very popular novel, as well as James. It's award-winning, and again, for good reason. Even if you don't think that the premise is interesting, if you're turned off by the fact that it's a historical fiction novel, I would say kind of try and forget that, because the writing, the characters, the relationships, it's so heartfelt, and he really makes you care about these people on both sides. He really helps you to understand the absurdity of war. Everyone is suffering, and whether they're Athenians in the quarry or the people on Syracuse who have lost loved ones. There's a lot of anger, and there's a lot of ill feelings, and he just makes you sympathize with everyone and anyone, and this destroyed me. It ripped my heart out, and I cannot wait to see what he comes up with next. Ferdia Lennon, I love you, and I love this novel. Second last book I'm going to mention. This is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Possibly one of the most, if not the most popular books of the 21st century so far. So this is a multi-generational story. So it starts off with Sunja. She is Korean. She ends up having this relationship and gets pregnant by this really dodgy character, and is not forced, but she ends up marrying this Minister passing through on his way to Japan. So she ends up getting married to him and they end up moving to Japan. This deals a lot with the experiences of ethnic Korean people living in Japan, which is something I didn't really know anything about, so I learned a lot while reading this. How much people from the Korea struggled in Japan. They were basically treated as like second-class citizens. They couldn't get jobs, they couldn't get houses, and if they did get houses, they were charged like exceedingly high rent, and if they got jobs, they were paid basically nothing. So it's the story follows them and their descendants. It starts in like 1911 and I think it ends in like the 1980s if I remember correctly. Talk about another book that broke my heart. I sobbed so much. I think this is probably the book that made me cry the most this year. Minjin Lee is a master of her craft. And I probably say this a lot, but I genuinely mean it. This is a modern masterpiece. And I know I just said that already, but it's true. Like, you have to believe me. This is incredible. A multi-generational saga, as I said. If you like those, I recommend it. You do, well, I don't know if it's the case for everyone, but I normally end up feeling a lot more of a connection to the original characters, which is true in this case as well. But I did really love her children and her children's children, where it goes and all the events that it kind of includes. It deals with everything that you can imagine. War, death, obviously, suicide, but there's a lot of joyous things to appreciate. And yeah, if that sounds like something you would be interested in, I think you should check it out. This was a very moving story and I'm so glad I finally read it. Another big chunky book. I'm reading a lot of chunkier books this year. Check out Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And finally, I can't believe it, lastly, this is Things in Nature Merely Grow by Yiyun Lee. This is another memoir, a very short little memoir that was actually published this year. I think this is the only book I read that was published this year that was included here. Yiyun Lee is actually a very accomplished writer of fiction. I have a couple of her books here. I've read 4 of her novels, I think. One of her most famous ones is actually The Book of Goose, which I liked, but this is a non-fiction memoir. So, tragically, I think it was in 2018 or 2017, her son killed himself, and then in 2024, her second son killed himself as well. So she had 2 children and they both died by suicide, and this talks about what that experience was like for her. As you can imagine, a very difficult topic to read about, to write about. I can imagine this was a really difficult thing for her to do, but wow, just breathtakingly beautiful. Another book that made me cry like a baby, and I would really recommend this. She is such accomplished writer, and if you feel like you could read this in a place now where it wouldn't be too sad for you to read, I would really recommend it. I don't know how someone can go through this and survive, but she really writes a moving tribute to both of her sons, Vincent and James. And yeah, I'm so glad I read this year. It was one of my most anticipated books coming out this year, and so I'm really glad that I enjoyed it. So that is everything. Those are all of the books that I've read so far this year that are my favourite. I'm so excited for the rest of the year to see what I'm going to read. I hope I end up reading more good books, because these have been some heavy hitters and I've really enjoyed reading them, although a lot of them deal with difficult topics. I'm so excited to see what else this year brings in terms of my reading, because I've loved so many books so far this year, so I'm really excited, and I hope you take my recommendations, and if you do, I hope you enjoy them. thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you soon, but you know, maybe it's gonna be another 6 months before you see me. Who knows? Thanks everyone.